Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
TheBlackVault.com is a website dedicated to releasing Freedom of Information access requests on UFOs and other materials from the CIA and other government bodies. In mid-2020, John Greenwald Jr., who runs the site, received thousands of pages of UFO-related documents declassified by the CIA since the 1980s. Join myself and Neil on Aliens Explored as we pick out some of the highlights for discussion.
Hello listeners, welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast exploring the unidentified aerial phenomena or UFO phenomena from all sorts of different perspectives. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Stu Jackson.
Hi Stu, and this week we're going to be looking at the Black Vault's CIA files on UFOs.
Yes, very exciting. So the Black Vault's been running for a long time now. What is it, 24 years?
Something like that. Yeah, I know it goes back to the 90s.
Yeah, 96, when it's John Greenwald Jr. He was only 15 at the time when he started the Black Vaults.
When he took an interest, wow.
Yeah, started with some government freedom of information access requests, and it's gone. I mean, it's got over 2 million files now. We're not looking at all of them in this episode, just to be clear. But yeah, over 2 million documents.
Right,
incredible.
And now nearly 3,000 pages have been made available in PDF form for anyone to read and download.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you mentioned about the PDF thing, because the CIA, so he did a massive Freedom of Information request to the CIA, and they dumped this, I mean, really shitty, petulant thing for the CIA to do. They begrudgingly gave him this information, but in an almost unreadable format, in paper format. Thousands and thousands and thousands of records in paper format, Neil.
Most of which look like very poor photocopies. They're extremely difficult to read. They've got all sorts of redaction on them, and all sorts of crossings out and amendments and
exactly.
So yeah.
So John has really, I mean, he's outdone himself. He has gone and he's had to hand scan them as well, because this is not like normal sheets of paper, a lot of them. They're the old, the larger printer style. Do you remember dot matrix printers, Neil?
Oh, I do, yes. With a tractor feed.
With the tractor feed.
And the big box of fanfold wide format paper. Yes, I remember that.
You can't just shove those through an auto feeder in a scanner, can you? So this is the issue he's had. He's having to hand scan every single piece of information. So it's taken him a long time, and he's working really hard. And do you know what, John? Big round of applause here from us on Aliens.
Absolutely, we appreciate
your hard work.
And the cross-referencing was difficult as well, because the computer, I think it was relying on the computer being able to read the documents and put in the cross-reference words, but some of it is just so unintelligible the computer can't actually see what the word is.
Yes.
So they're only partially indexed.
But he's making it accessible through. So he's uploading it in searchable PDF format, so it's making it easier. We ought to mention the website itself for the listeners to visit, theblackvault.com. And yeah, you can find all this information.
Vault, as in a place where you lock things up, as opposed to electrical current.
Yes.
V-A-U-L-T.
I thought for a moment there you were going to say like vaulting over things, which would be spelt the same way.
But then it is. It is like vaulting over things, isn't it? That's the same vault. When you pole vault.
That's like a safe that you...
V-A-U-L-T.
Like a storage box.
I think we're getting a bit sidelined here.
We are.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be Aliens Explode if we didn't go off track.
Absolutely. And as you say, it seemed to be very petty and spiteful, and it's the kind of thing you would do if a court ordered you to hand over some information for discovery in a trial and you really didn't want to, that you would try and swamp the prosecution with a mass, with a truckload of paper that they would no way be able to go through before the. It's that kind of. It has that kind of feel to it, doesn't it? Yeah, we want you to just look at this stuff and say, why bother?
Yes. Now, interestingly enough, I was talking with my sister this morning about this subject because she's a regular listener. So big shout out, hello Dawn.
Hi Dawn.
Complete side note here. She was shocked to hear that you're older than me. She said you sound much younger than I do.
Well, thank you. Well, I do make a living from my voice, especially these days when we're all locked down. So,
but unlike me,
unlike you, and nice to, and I have gone for jobs where they want an older man in his 60s, and don't get the job because they sound too young.
Yeah, well, there you go. But no, just for the other listeners out there, Neil is much older than me.
I'm much older. Yes.
But yeah, so I was talking with Dawn this morning about this and mentioned about this format in which the CIA have released these documents. And she suggests that, well, maybe it's a way of burying information, maybe it's a way of hiding information, and I'm going to say I don't think I agree with that entirely. I see the point, but I think if there was really going to be stuff that they didn't want to release, they just wouldn't release it. Kind of as simple as that, really. This feels much more petulant, like you say. Yeah,
and also a lot of the information. Well, although it's come from the CIA, a lot of it is open source material. It's mentioning things that have been in the news, that have appeared in newspapers. So they're not giving away government secrets, and some of it is really tangential to UFOs. Yeah, the mention of UFOs is just almost an aside. There's one document. Might as well go right in and start quoting these things.
Well, before you do, it's probably worth mentioning to the listeners that you and I have gone away separately, and picked out a few files that stood out to us, haven't we?
Yeah,
and that's the format for today. So it's a little bit different, this show, than our normal
we didn't
one.
agree on it, so it's quite possible there's some overlap here.
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, we perhaps ought to have done this before we started recording.
Yeah.
So
that's the freestyling style of this show, isn't it?
Absolutely. So start with your first one then, please, Neil.
Right,
Fantastic.
My first one is just really to illustrate how tangential some of this information is. This is a report about the Serbian police who are hunting down the Serbian war criminal Radovan Karadzic, who had completely gone to ground at one point. He'd escaped pursuit. They were supposed to have some kind of tracking on him. They had tracking on his phone. They found his phone in a pit, and they were mystified. There's there are no more signals coming from his shelters that have been reliably located. Allegedly, Karadzic has switched off the electricity, cut the telephone lines, thrown his cellular phone into a pit. So basically, they couldn't find him. And then at some point, further on in the story, it just happens to say the Pentagon pundits are at a loss. They, who are usually said to communicate regularly with the extraterrestrial beings and for whom there are no secrets on our planet. And that's it, just in the middle of this report about a hunt for a fugitive war criminal. So that's gone into their X-Files.
Okay.
As I mentioned, that counts. So this just shows that they've got everything in here.
Do you know what that... So that strikes me. It's an interesting... I was wondering where you were going with that one, because this has nothing to do with UFOs. So many people will be aware. Of course, most of our listeners are in America, but I think it's no secret that our current Prime Minister is Boris Johnson, unfortunately. And one of the things he was most famous for. I know it sounds like I'm digressing, but I am relating this to what you're saying. One of the things he was most famous for at one point was the Brexit referendum, and basically what is, and I can say this quite clearly because it's been proven, a big lie on the side of a bus. Part of their advertising was that if we came out of the EU, they would be able to give £350 million per week to the NHS, the National Health Service. And that was an absolute lie, that we were giving this £350 million to the EU. So the point was, if you put into Google Boris Johnson bus, this is what you got, right? Right, loads of hits about him lying. Basically lying to the population. So shortly after this, I think it was shortly after he became Prime Minister, he was in an interview and he was asked an inane question about how he likes to relax. And he came out with this most baffling, stupid, but moronic answer, which he likes to turn wooden fruit crates into London buses. He would paint them red, and he'd paint the people inside, and he'd paint the wheels, and he'd like to picture them sort of going to various places of work. I mean, it's the most, I'm sorry to say, it's the most fucking stupid, moronic response he could have given to any question. But actually, it's really clever. It didn't work in this case, but what he was trying to do, this is my speculation now, I think what he was trying to do was create a new response to a Google search of Boris Johnson bus.
I'd never thought of it like that.
I think it was like a really insidious, manipulative way of trying to basically redact history when you do searches about him. Now, think about this case that you've created here. If someone goes into these CIA documents and searches extraterrestrials, and they come up with a document like that, oh, well, of course, It's silly that they've got lots of files about extraterrestrials.
They who are usually said to communicate regularly with the extraterrestrial beings. Well, said by who? Who's...
It's almost like a deliberate form of disinformation, and that's the connection I'm trying to make with that.
Okay.
So I wonder. I mean, again, this is pure speculation. I've not come across that particular file before. I hadn't heard of it before you mentioned it, but that's almost the first thing it reminded me of was this Boris Johnson bus interview answer. Was it's like disinformation. It's like redacting history almost.
Okay, so what did you find, Steve?
So I'm going to talk first of all about a document that was goes back to 1976, 26th of April to be precise. Now, it's got a reference number on here. I don't know if this is a Black Vault reference number, or it's certainly been added after the original document, of C for Charlie 000152235. Now this, they refer to the Assistant Deputy Director for Science and Technology being shown something related to a UFO that was brought to him by hand. It's stated in the report that he would personally look into it, and afterwards he gave advice moving forward. Now, the advice is classified. I'll read you exactly what it says in relating to that particular. So we contacted the ADDS&T Dr. Redacted to see if he knew of any official UFO program, and also to attempt to answer some of the questions posed by Redacted. Dr. Redacted exhibited interest in Redacted, which was hand carried to his office. After a short examination of its contents, Dr. Redacted advised us that he would personally look into the matter and get back to us. So, exhibited interest in what? In contents, in debris. But there's definitely something, some physical thing related to UFOs that was shown to the Assistant Deputy Director for Science and Technology, who then he takes an interest in it. So obviously that's a lot of redacted information, but also simply the fact, here they are saying some physical evidence relating to the UFO was shown to him, and it was interesting. That's quite telling.
But we're not allowed to know what it is. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
But even without knowing, I think that's a very, very telling document.
And has it got any kind of security classification on it?
Not that I can see. But after redaction, of course, it's approved for release. But I mean, looking at the actual document itself, or a scan of the actual document, I mean, there is so much that is redacted. Like, for example, there's a redacted part, and when I say redacted, I'm talking about straight strike-throughs with a marker pen. It's like, so there's a big block right at the top of this piece of paper, so that could have said top secret or such and such a level, or No, I would have thought they would have left that intact. If it's no longer top secret, then surely it can't say top secret anymore.
It can't say top secret, but they would have marked it as declassified from top secret, subject to these redactions. That would have been clear, because at some point someone would have registered that as a top secret document and taken all the usual precautions that you take with a top secret document.
It's got a stamp on it saying approved for release and then handwritten dating. And now the copy I'm looking at is just, it cuts off that date, unfortunately, but that's how it's been. So I would imagine they'd strike through top secret and stamp it approved for release.
Yeah.
Probably.
I saw some. I saw some documents in the Black Vault where it's just pretty much everything is redacted.
Yep.
It's just a page of black marker pen. You're allowed to have that. Well,
yes.
Great.
Well, it's evidence that a document exists. It's evidence that that there is stuff that they can't tell you. So things like that, while frustrating, can sometimes also be useful as well.
But it's also another way of getting around the Freedom of Information Act. So we've got this information, we've got this on document, let's redact it, let's put a black marker pen through it, and then in 10 years' time, when we're asked to divulge this, we're going to say, well, this is all we've got, because it was all redacted at that time, and we don't know what it says. I mean, they might have redacted it recently. They might say, oh shit, we've got to let this out. Okay, let's cross that. Okay, we can release it now. Sorry, that's how we found it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's it.
I mean, I've got a fax here.
Okay.
It's marked unclass. So it's unclassified, and even that has got a redaction on it. When it says copy to, blanked out. And this is a story that appeared in the press. It appeared in the source is Pravda, Moscow Pravda, in Russian, 15th of April 1991. and it's about diverging opinions on the cause of the Sasebo explosion. This must have been the 12th of April 1991. A highly powerful explosion rang out at midnight near the small city of Sasebo in the Ryazan area, causing a massive shockwave, knocking out windows, including the frames, in half of the apartment blocks, buildings and structures. Multi-storey blocks rocked as in an earthquake. And it goes on to say, nobody was seriously injured. Some people were in shock and some have been cut by broken glass. Schools were out of action for a while. But it says the population is now less worried about the resulting damage from the incident than the cause, because of the uncertainty. They still don't know what caused the explosion. Some people are talking about munitions left buried since the last war. Others claim that a powerful air bomb fell. A third group blame it on a meteorite, and a fourth group blame UFOs. So that's why this is now in the files. And there are people who supposedly saw a moving fiery sphere.
Okay.
But although some military men who visited the scene said that it was ammonium nitrate that exploded. The one reassuring thing is there have been no variations in the radiation background and the composition of the atmosphere. Nothing detected, so it wasn't a nuke, or it wasn't something that's going to drift our way and poison us.
Okay,
basically, yeah, because they got this explosion at the time, they didn't know what caused it. Could have been buried munitions, could have been a store of ammonium nitrate, but somebody blamed it. A fourth group claimed that they'd seen a fiery sphere in the sky.
Right, but which, some people would have reported as a meteorite, other people as a UFO. And you know, I feel I get what you're saying here, but you'll get no argument from me that there are plenty of UFO reports out there that are easily identifiable, that are definitely not going to be of extraterrestrial or otherworldly origin. You'll get no argument from me with that.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm not even trying to get an argument from you. I'm just saying that showing really the tangential nature of some of these stories, and some of it is completely unclassified. It would have been in the press. It would have been in the Moscow Pravda in 1991.
Oh, I think
possibly translated, sent around the world. There's been this mysterious explosion, but it's not classified.
I think to possibly clear up a misunderstanding here, the Black Vaults is not just UFOs. It is about classified documents, full stop.
Yeah. And this has come from the CIA, classified document, but actually there's nothing classified in it. There's nothing in it that wasn't in the press. But probably what is classified is the fact that the CIA are interested in it.
Yes.
That would have been...
Yes, they're not an archivist, so...
Yeah,
I mean,
I know from my own experience.
But yeah, that's not their job, as it were.
Yeah, or sometimes, as I know from my own experience in army intelligence, it's not, all the information you have might be open source. It might be all out there in the public forum. But what's not out there in the public forum are the explicit links between them. How one thing relates to another, that could be classified. And just the very fact that how the information was gathered, the fact that we didn't read it in a newspaper, we read it from intercepting United Press International telexes.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think
that makes it secret, And
I think that's a good point. It's important to understand that element of it. But to come around to actual UFO reports, which is what we're about. Yes. I picked up a second one here, going back to 1959. This is from the Belgian Congo, where there was an eyewitness report of a UFO. and a sketch was made of it, quite a detailed sketch. So I'm looking at an actual drawing with numbered parts and what have you. And it says the launching. So this is your classic UFO shape, but with sort of sharp edges on either side, quite shallow. Some feet coming down in a straight line, and an aerial rising directly up from the centre in the top. It says the launching occurs at a sharp angle in the manner of a discus throw. The revolutions per minute of the rim probably amount to 22,000. The jets on the bottom of the rim serve to propel the disc vertically upwards. Lateral steerage results from switching on and off various jet groups. Now, the interesting thing I find about this report is they're not talking it's theorised that these jets would do this. They're talking about it very factually. This is how it happens. And let's not forget, this was not long after the Roswell, New Mexico crash, which was 1947. So that's what was 5 years after. Here in the Belgian Congo, you've got this person who sees this disc. It's they obviously get a rough estimate of its size. They look at how fast it's spinning, so that they're even able to work out from such a detailed report that it's spinning at 22,000 revolutions per minute. That's a massive speed.
Sorry, yeah. How do you calculate that? You can't see 22,000 RPM, can you? I mean, my car probably goes up to about 8,000 RPM when it's really getting into the red.
I know. I don't know how they've calculated it, because I've only got a part of the report, as with many things, so much redacted. But yeah, really, the fact that there is a report, they've managed to make these calculations. They're like I say, they're talking about them factually though, and that's the thing that really intrigued me about this report. They're not hypothesizing. They're not speculating. They're talking very much. This is how it takes off. This is how it manoeuvres. This is how fast it spins. That's all I've got on that one, but I found that quite an interesting element.
Yeah, is it just one report of it, or is it corroborated anywhere? Has anyone else seen anything like this?
It's the only one connected to it that I found for that. That's not to say there aren't other documents that connect to it. I mean, let's not forget, these documents are still being scanned as we talk, as we speak. So, because there's just so many of them. But no, it was the only one I could see at the time that related to this report from the Belgian Congo.
Okay, I've got another report from Russia.
With love,
and this looks sorry.
With love.
with love,
from
yeah.
Russia with love, yeah.
Yeah.
Lame joke.
And this is from a document titled USSR National Affairs and subtitled Scientific Affairs. And it seems to have just a few paragraphs. It's just subject after subject. So the subject you can see beforehand is Prognos 6 automatic space station launched, and then there's a few paragraphs on that, and then it comes down to a title heading Unusual Natural Phenomenon Observed in Karelia, reported by the Moscow TASS International Service in Russian. Petrozavodsk, 22nd of September, this will be 1977. The inhabitants of Petrozavodsk, the capital of the Soviet Republic of Karelia, have witnessed an unusual natural phenomenon. About 0400, a huge star suddenly flared up in the dark sky, impulsively sending shafts of light to the earth. This star moved slowly over Petrozavodsk and spreading over in the form of a medusa, hung there, showering the city with a multitude of very fine rays, which created an image of pouring rain. After some time, the luminescent rays ceased. The Medusa turned into a bright semicircle and resumed its movement in the direction of Lake Onega, the horizon of which was shrouded in grey cloud. So it goes on to describe the lights and so on.
Why do I feel that's a report we've heard before?
Yeah.
Why that sounds very familiar. Have we?
A sun bright light in the sky.
It was the Medusa thing, and the light coming down like rain. That sounded. I'm sure we've discussed that in a previous episode. That report.
When they say Medusa, I mean in lots of languages, Medusa means jellyfish, wasn't that?
So tentacular.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, what's your take? What do you make of that report?
Again, the saying they've listed it as an unusual natural phenomenon. So is this something burning up in the atmosphere? This lasted for 10 or 12 minutes, hanging over the town of Petrozavodsk.
But they also say it was a star that did that. Well,
yeah,
no, a
huge
star's
star.
not going to have that impact in the Earth's atmosphere because
a star would
star.
Obliterate it. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I don't think they mean an actual star.
Well, that's the point. I mean, and is it that
they're not using very precise astronomical language?
No,
yeah.
Is it that these things are getting lost in translation though? Because that can happen. Things get reinterpreted. Or misinterpreted.
Well, when they say star and Medusa, I mean, English speakers will think, well, Medusa was so it looked like a woman's head with snakes for hair, did it?
Well, does that mean it's writhing tentacles? And that's how I would picture it, is writhing tentacles, but perhaps they were just hanging, like you say, like a jellyfish.
And tentacles would be on top of the head, whereas a French person hearing Medusa would think jellyfish.
Yeah. Interesting, though. Interesting report. I've got one here going back to 1984. So this is a report from the 22nd of May. Now this particular report is part of a collection of reports about a project called Stargate. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this, but this was all to do with psychic abilities, remote viewing, things like that. And this particular report I found quite interesting. It's a 9-page report, so it's quite lengthy, and it is a transcript of someone doing remote viewing, but on the planet of Mars, going back 1 million years BC.
Right. Okay.
And in this report, so it's done as a complete transcript. That the remote viewer is given certain coordinates, 40.89 degrees north, 9.55 degrees west, that sort of thing. They talk about there being a pyramid that they can see. They talk about beings in there, sort of tall, thin beings, much larger than a human being, wearing strange clothes. Now, bear in mind that Mars has a lower gravity than Earth, so it has been theorised that should humanoid life develop on Mars, they would in fact be taller than us. So that's not a strange thing. There's talking about obelisks that they see on Mars. But it's a really interesting sort of read. I'm not going to go through it all because there's so much in these 9 pages. But this idea that through remote viewing they're aware of life on the planet of Mars back 1 million years ago. If they discovered this in 1984, that would actually provide quite a drive to try and get to Mars, to at least investigate it so that, in this looking for life on Mars, looking for evidence of life, could well be what they're actually looking for is the technology
Hmm.
from the beings of Mars.
It's just remote viewing is a bit, you lump it together with tarot reading and
It gets
mediums
lumped
and
together with tarot reading, but let's not forget this is the government doing this and taking it very, very seriously. Project Stargate is something I would actually recommend the listeners do go out and investigate because it is absolutely fascinating stuff.
I'd also recommend watching The Men Who Stare at Goats. Great film starring Ewan McGregor, Beau Bridges and Kevin Spacey.
But yes, we have discussed that in a previous episode. So what other reports have you got?
Well, again, another one where it's just a paragraph that appears in a report dated July 1965, and this looks like it's just a feed from a news feed. So there's an article, Punitive Steps Against Extremists Asked. Further down, Meatpacking Industry Crisis. Further down, Relations with Algeria, blah, blah. And then suddenly, Antarctic Flying Saucers. A group of red, green and yellow flying saucers has been seen flying over Deception Island for 2 hours by Argentine, Chilean and British bases in Antarctica. The flying saucers were also seen flying in formation over the South Orkney Islands in quick circles. That's from the Buenos Aires ANSA Spanish report. And then that's it. And then it goes on to an article about oil.
Right, okay.
So again, just a quick paragraph. Spotted this thing, report it, boom, move on.
Okay, and was there redacted information in amongst that, or?
Actually, yes, there is. Right after this quick circles, it just says Buenos Aires ANSA News Spanish, 1556 GMT, 6th of July, 1965, and then something is crossed out. I can just make out for approval. And looks perhaps a name, but for some reason, it's not so much redacted as crossed out and made difficult to read. Oh, actually, I can see it. It says for official use only, and actually, a few of the reports have got the last paragraph or the last sentence in capitals and in brackets says for official use only, and that's been crossed out on all these reports.
Right. So it's just basically it's a UFO report in amongst lots of other reports.
Yeah. So basically that's a declassification. Someone said it's no longer for official use only. We can release this. But that's it. Just a quick report. Yeah, we saw some flying saucers over Antarctica. Boom, onto something about oil imports.
Okay. Well, I think the fact that they're showing the interest. I mean, it's no secret that the CIA and FBI and what have you, they'll have an interest. But the fact that it should be included in an official report like that is kind of it's validation of the fact that they take interest in these UFO reports.
Yeah, this looks more like an intercepted news feed. That's what you'd see from UPI. It would just be this constant feed of fanfold tractor feed paper, and it would just have a few paragraphs on each subject as the news comes in.
Interesting. Well, I only have one more for today.
I have one more too.
Oh, fantastic. So,
okay.
Now, this it's not so much a single report as a thread of reports about a particular person. So this is Dr. Leon Davidson, who... Now, Dr. Leon Davidson was engineering supervisor for the atomic weapons program for the United States. So a very serious, very educated man in a very quite a strong position. And it starts in the 1950s, where he starts sending letters to is it Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he talks about wanting a verbatim translation of something he refers to as the space message, and he wants the ID of the transmitter from which it came. Now, there's a lot of back and forth between him and the Air Force Base. They try and fob him off and say, "Oh, it's just Morse code, and it came from this transmitter." And he keeps coming back to them because that answer just doesn't satisfy. Now, given his level of education, if it was something as simple as Morse code, he'd clearly heard it. But saying, oh yes, it's Morse code, just doesn't give him an answer. Also, they recognise what he's talking about when he talks about the space message. So that's quite interesting. But it all concludes, essentially, in 1958, when they say, we're unable to answer any more questions because the records have been destroyed. Which is not the first time the government have claimed something like that falsely, but, as a way of shutting him up. But he remained of interest to the CIA, well, basically for the rest of his life, and he always pursued information being released about UFOs and otherworldly things. But that was quite interesting. What is this space message? And you try and search through the files on that. All you find is this guy's request on it. But worth our listeners searching through and looking at all the documents. But yeah, that is Dr. Leon Davidson.
Leon Davidson. Right. So, I mean, when we communicate on Earth, and we use satellite broadcasting or a satellite transmission, talking on a satellite phone, is there any leakage from the satellites? Obviously, you're sending a signal up into orbit to be picked up by a communication satellite and then transmitted back down to somewhere over the horizon on the other side of the Earth. Is there any leakage, as it were, that some of your signal just continues going out into space?
Don't know. I don't know if
and then could then be picked up as an extraterrestrial signal.
Well, it would have to get bounced back again, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
there'd have to be something picking up the signal and then returning it.
Yeah, I know. When you broadcast something, you're just broadcasting on the airwaves, and anyone with the right equipment can pick it up. You just go just general broadcast. So are you effectively doing that when you communicate with the satellite? So the satellite can pick you up, but some of the signal will go out and be picked up by something further out in space.
Well, that's not entirely the case because, as you say, you've got to have these satellites to get it to other points, because otherwise the planet gets in the way of the signal.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But does some of the signal, like when you're broadcasting, just go off to be picked up by anyone else?
Oh, theoretically, yeah, it goes out into the universe and... so not in all directions, obviously, because, like I say, the planet gets in the way of a lot of it, and presumably other objects do as well.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering that if you were scanning the skies for an extraterrestrial, doing a SETI, looking for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, and you picked up a signal in space, could that actually be a signal that originated on Earth?
Oh, I see what you mean. No, it'd be going the wrong direction, wouldn't it? It'd be going away from you rather than towards you.
It would be going away from you, but would you be able to tell which direction it was going in?
Think of it...
If it's just out there. I mean, it's travelling at the speed... I guess, yeah, your comms are travelling at the speed of light, aren't they? So I imagine they would get away from the Earth pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If they just went off into space.
Well, think of it like throwing a paper aeroplane ahead of you. If you throw it hard enough and fast enough that you can't see it anymore, you're not going to see it because it's still there. It's still there, but you can't see it anymore.
Out of range.
So you're not going to detect it.
Yeah, or more like firing a bullet out of a gun. You don't see it because it's moving away from you too fast.
Yeah, but
you might see a bit of swirl in the air.
But a signal, no, for us to pick up a signal means it's got to be travelling towards us. Otherwise, every radio station on the planet would be constantly playing everything it's ever played. Yeah,
the signal has to go somewhere, and presumably it deteriorates as well.
I don't know as it does. That's the thing. It keeps travelling, but it's almost like a physical object travels. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there a possibility that a signal you've picked up in space that sounds like Morse code could actually have a terrestrial origin, that we've just picked it up?
Only if it was picked up and returned to us. It would have to be returned to us. Now, I say returned to us, it could be bouncing off something. Like, if you fire something at the moon and I don't know if it would act as an audio reflector. That's way too technical for me, but...
Well, that's where Arthur C. Clarke got the idea of the communications satellite, didn't it? Because he had this idea, well, what if I bounce a signal off the moon and then I could get it over the horizon? I could get it to...
But we don't want to conflate science fiction with actual science.
But what I'm saying is that... Well, no, he was working as a radio operator during the Second World War. And he bounced the signal off the moon, but realised that the moon was too far away for it to be of practical use. So he came up with the idea of lower orbit satellites that signals could bounce off,
right?
To increase the range of transmissions. So a signal could bounce off the moon.
Well, I get what you're saying there, but my understanding of satellites is they're not just a physical object that you're bouncing something off. They're taking the signal, they're amplifying it, and they are transmitting it out again.
Yeah.
It's not bouncing's probably the wrong word. They're receiver transmitters. And it wouldn't work just having a dish up there that you bounce it off. That just wouldn't work. Would for lasers, but not for sound. Yeah. Anyway, let's have your final...
the final one is just a report from May 1962. Again, it seems to be one of these feeds that has just a mix of whatever news articles come up. And one of them was about UFOs spotted over Buenos Aires in Argentina. Flying objects over the city of Bahia Blanca, south of Buenos Aires, causing varied concern among the people there. Strange luminous bodies suspended for several minutes over the city, which disappeared quickly. A local photographer was able to take 2 pictures of the object, which looks like a luminous oval on the print. The Cordoba Astronomical Observatory is compiling data about this phenomenon, which has been observed in other regions of Argentina, although not as clearly as on that occasion. The observatory has asked people to submit their observations in order to determine whether the phenomenon was a cluster of meteorites, part of an artificial satellite, or due to other causes. And that's really it. So just another sighting over the city from 1962, and then it just goes to the details of where he was when he saw it and what he did.
Okay, so kind of keep it quite
but
factual.
the photographer does say that he took several photos. One, the very instant the mysterious body stopped and changed its course. This was when the object was closest to Earth.
Right.
That's from May 1962.
Okay, well, that sounds like an interesting one to delve into. I doubt there's any answers. But yeah, that's a fascinating one. So, okay, well, let's summarise our thoughts on the black vaults and the UFO documents that have been declassified and released. Thanks to John's very good work. What did you think? Had you come across the black vaults before, or was it a new?
I've come across it when we discussed this subject before about when we were discussing something related to this about the American government releasing its information on UFOs. I think. Yeah, nothing I've seen looks like a classified top secret document that they've redacted or that they've suddenly made available and said, oh yes, we knew about all this stuff. We've had regular contact with extraterrestrials. We meet with them. They share technology with us. They're on our side. Nothing like that. It seems to. I would say there's so much to go through, but all I've seen is open source. So I guess what was secret was the fact that the CIA had taken an interest in it.
Yes.
And had filed away that information.
Well, that in of itself, I think, is quite interesting. But no, I mean, as much as many of us in the UFO community would absolutely love the idea of some smoking gun where the government just suddenly says, "Yeah, do you know what? It's all true, and here's this top secret document that reveals it." No, realistically we know that's not going to happen. Not without some serious developments and changes, at least in society. But no, I think, I mean, the fact that they are taking an interest, and certainly I think there are plenty of documents out there that, whilst probably not much of a smoking gun, do present quite a lot of interest. Like I said, that first one that I talked about, where they talk about some physical evidence related to UFOs being presented to someone. All right, we might not know what it is, we might not know the name of the assistant director, but we know that some physical evidence was handed to him. And when we're talking about UFOs, well, that in of itself is evidence that there is physical evidence connected with UFOs.
Just wish that there was something a bit more.
The frustration. So I'm sensing the frustration in your voice there, and it's the frustration that many of us in the UFO community have been feeling for decades and decades. But we've got to keep plugging away, and we've got to keep scratching at it, and that's where podcasts like this come in, of course, and of course the absolutely phenomenal work by the Black Vault.
Absolutely.
So there we are. But what do you think, listeners? Have you found anything in the Black Vault yourself that is particularly of interest that we might want to look at and talk about here on the show? Do you have your own stories you'd like to share with us? That would be absolutely fantastic to hear them. And of course, what do you think about the stories that we have come up with? Are they just a load of tosh, or is there something more to them all? Do let us know what you think by the usual channels of Facebook and Twitter by searching Aliens Explored, or of course you can visit us on aliensexplored.com. Do join us next time when we will be going into Soviet Russia, and indeed going underwater as we examine Russia's giant underwater humanoids. Exciting stuff.
Look forward to that one.
Absolutely. In the meantime, keep watching those CIA files and the skies. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.